Yo, what is up guys, Grim here. In the Siege of the Atlas expansion, we're getting 4 new bosses and massive changes to the existing boss lineup. In this video, we're going to break down and see how all of these changes are going to impact the end game of Path of Exile and the meta game that is evolved around boss killing in general. So if you're a fan of boss killing or you just love the blast maps in the end game, this is the video for you. It's going to be really relevant. But first, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and like the video. It would seriously help me out. But without further ado, let's get into it. So of course, we're getting huge changes, but one of the biggest is that all boss fragments and keys and any way to enter a boss fight is now tradable. They have all been itemized, and even the new bosses are itemized, meaning that all of the mappers can trade all of the bossing materials over to the bosses, and you have free reign to farm whatever you like or whatever takes your interest or what you might think is profitable. This is going to massively impact the way the economy functions, and it really does shake things up. We'll get into this a little bit later in terms of the accessibility of things like Cirrus and the Conquerors, but it's definitely going to make things pretty damn interesting. The next thing we have to talk about here is the actual requirement of the new Atlas. So in previous iterations, you had to fight the Conquerors and then fight Cirrus in order to kind of, acquire and fully power up your Atlas. It wasn't too hard, but it was definitely a bit of a challenge. You had to fight Awaken level 4 Cirrus, Awaken level 8 Cirrus, but it wasn't, too insane. Now with the new Atlas though, in order to fully power your Atlas, you need to complete Maven, Umbra, the 2 new endgame bosses, and then if you want all of the Atlas passive skill tree points, you need to do every single invitation and boss in the game. This is a way steeper requirement. And in addition to that, they also boosted the power of sextants, the tradability of them, and it's just way more insane now. So in order to get the full power Atlas, it's far more difficult. What does this mean? It's a better time than ever to start a boss killer, and you can better believe it that most people will be. So overall, this is going to create quite a lot of interest and buzz around the boss killing meta, and I expect that it's going to be kind of a bit of a crowded house come the 3.17 launch and the leagues after that, due to the fact that there's just so much need to have bossing potential and the ability to slay all these bosses to be able to get to the end game Atlas state. So very important there. All right. The next thing I want to talk about quickly is that influence is probably going to be the predominant way to craft still, at least for the start of 3.17. So if you guys didn't know, we have new influence types being introduced with the Siege of the Atlas expansion, which kind of works around the Eater of Worlds and the Exarch, the Syrian Exarch. But overall, these are only usable on helmets, chest piece, boots, and gloves. The other slots, however, can be used up by influenced items. So weapons, amulets, rings, offhands like shields and quivers. These are all viable for influence, whereas the new Siege of the Atlas influences are not. We also still do have all of the old legacy influence kind of currency. So we have Awakener Orbs, we have Maven Orbs, we have Conquerors Exalted Orbs. They're all still in and acquirable, which is pretty interesting. In addition to that, we know that system. We know how it works. We know the mods. Some of them might be kind of migrated over or removed, but we know how they work, and all the build guides out there right now are using that kind of a system. So, if you look up a build guide right now, it's probably going to tell you to get a bunch of Conqueror influence mods and all sorts of stuff like that. So this is setting the scene for massive demand for Conquerors and Conqueror related kind of materials, which is going to have lots of impact on the actual demand, supply, and all sorts of stuff like that. Kind of compare that to the new Siege of the Atlas system, and we see that no one knows anything about this. It's not going to be in any build guides. Like, we don't even know the mods yet, let alone how to craft it, and there's a lot of mystery kind of surrounding this, and I don't imagine we're going to get too many guides or kind of knowledgeable people about this system until well and truly after the league launch, when stuff starts to solidify. which is pretty much, pretty interesting. In addition to that, some of the big draws, the unique items to some of these endgame bosses, like a lot of them probably are pretty damn build around. For example, one of the Exarch uniques, the Amulet, which transfers all of your attributes into a different stat, and the Exarch Staff, which makes you have crazy low resistance but gives you triple elemental damage. These are build around uniques. We don't know what the demand is going to be around these, and overall, farming these bosses is probably going to be a little bit more hit or miss until we start to get more of an economy around it, and a lot of creative people kind of get together in a room and figure out what we're going to be able to do with all these items and crafting techniques. Furthermore, a few of the other draw cards of the new Siege of the Atlas kind of bosses are going to be the new crafting materials, which take advantage of which influence is dominating which are basically on the level of harvest crafting. They're incredibly powerful. They're going to be probably pretty valuable, but they do require you to lock you into the Siege of the Atlas crafting system, and they also require you to only be used on helmet, chest, boots, or gloves. A pretty damn big restriction for those currencies. So overall, I'm sure that the Siege of the Atlas items are probably going to start off pretty damn cheap until some people can fully realize their potential. Now, that's not to say that it's not going to be worth farming them. Overall, it's just new content. New content always starts out a bit unknown, a bit shaky. If you want a recent example, look at the Scourge currencies. They all started out dirt cheap until people realized that you can get free 6 links with the tainted fusing orbs. It's probably going to be a very similar time, and as such, on League Start, Siege of the Atlas probably isn't going to be the go-to in terms of making currency. What is going to be going to be the go-to is probably going to be the legacy systems. So let's dive into those and talk a little bit about how they've changed and why they're going to be just so powerful for the new expansion, and why I believe the bossing meta is probably going to be revolving around farming the absolute living daylights out of these until the Siege of the Atlas system is firmly established. Having said that though, there's probably going to be insane demand for the legacy systems all league long, as they just are really well known, and the power level of some of them are pretty damn high. And I have also got a word from the GGG team that a lot of the Siege of the Atlas mods don't overlap with the legacy Conqueror and influence modifiers like that. To give you an example, you're probably not going to find Frenzy Charge on hit, for example, on the Siege of the Atlas implicits, as that would give you overlap and kind of make one of them redundant. That's at least what they've told me. However, that obviously could change at any point. Okay, so let's dive into the changes to the legacy system. So Conquerors and Cirrus, these two have received the most changes here. The Conquerors have received their own invitation, making them far, far more lucrative to farm. And they already were one of the best things to farm in terms of currency per hour. So overall, the Conquerors have insane divination cards. They have the Exalted Orbs on them. And now they're also going to drop Cirrus Fragments. To top it all off though, they're going to have the coveted influenced items of their influence type. For example, Hunter Boots, Warlord Bows, things like this are going to be worth money, and they're certainly going to be sold pretty openly. So the actual availability of Conqueror influence items is going to be going way down, as the only place you can acquire them is within Conqueror maps, as well as a few other things which can come from other League mechanics, but those are few and far between. The Conqueror maps though are generally pretty much only going to be T14 plus from what the GGG team have said and how other Guardian maps in the current game operate right now, meaning they're going to be very endgame and very exclusive, meaning you can't gain access to them until later on, meaning if you can get there early and get all the Conqueror items and sell them to other players who haven't gotten there yet, it could be incredibly powerful. Of course, the Conqueror Exalted Orbs are also some of the most powerful crafting tools we have at our disposal, especially when combined with Harvest, so there's going to be massive demand for that. And I imagine the invitation, which obviously is going to drop the usual stuff like the Maven splinters and all sorts of stuff like that, is also going to drop the Conqueror's Exalted Orbs as well, as that's kind of generally how it works with these invitations. All right, let's move on to Cirrus. So Cirrus obviously drops his normal stuff. He's got the Awakener Orb, he's got the uniques, and he's got influenced items on him. What has he lost? Well, he's lost the Cirrus Watchstone as well as Awakened Gems, a fairly heavy blow to the man. However, he's gotten a new item in its place, and it more than makes up for it. The Orb of Domination has been confirmed by GGG to drop off of Cirrus, Shaper, Elder, and Uber Elder. So the Orb of Domination is essentially the Maven's Orb, but now it's available in a lot more places because the Maven kind of has a whole bunch of other stuff that she drops now. So Cirrus overall, combined with the Conquerors and combined with the ability to run an invitation, suddenly is probably the most enticing boss loop that you can farm in the game now, in my opinion. Obviously the Exalted Orbs are incredibly insane. The ability to gain access to Maven Splinters, which we'll get to why that's going to be so broken later on, and also the ability to pick up Awakener Orbs, which are going to be in massive demand now that nobody's actually running the Conquerors due to the fact that it's mandatory, is going to put massive money in your pocket, I imagine. So very, very good there. And then of course, to boot, you get the Maven Orb. The Maven Orb, which was pretty much Maven's only drop for the longest time, is now on Cirrus as well. Completely crazy. Overall, I think the Conquerors and Cirrus are going to be one of the ones to farm and one of the best ones to farm early. And I imagine they're probably going to be one of the best ones to farm all league long due to the fact that the demand for Awakener's Orbs is always so damn high. All right, let's get on to the next one, Shaper. So Shaper overall is part of the Umbra loop, which obviously contributes to the end game chase item Watcher's Eye. So Shaper is always going to be in demand. He has his usual kind of presence. You can do the Shaper Guardians, you can do the invitation, you know, business as usual. He doesn't have any insane drops like the Conquerors do. And then Shaper himself obviously drops his influence items, which are about as impactful as always. He'll have 86 bases, which are now far more limited and harder to get from maps, which is definitely pretty damn good. Should probably be picking those up. He's still got the Uber Elder Fragment. His uniques are as good as ever, and he's now also got the Maven Orb, the Orb of Domination on him as well. So pretty much business as usual for the Shaper, but he now has a new bomb drop, which is pretty damn good. You know, if it's got anywhere close to the drop rate of Maven's Orb, this thing is going to be way more profitable farm now. And of course, you get your Uber Elder Fragment, which is pretty damn nice. Elder Guardians, business as usual as well. Feed into Elder, which, you know, is previously one of the best bosses to farm if you sell your Watcher's Eyes un-ID'd, and he just got one hell of a lot better. So you get all the stuff you're used to, and now you also get the Orb of Domination on top of that. Absolutely crazy, fantastic. All three of these sets of, you know, kind of tried and true methods are going to be way, way better than ever due to the introduction of the Orb of Domination, as well as the reworked invitation system, which we'll get to here in a second. So the next one here is Uber Elder. So Uber Elder actually took a bit of a hit with the massive nerf to Void Fletcher, and the fact that you would, like, even if you were using it, you wouldn't have to corrupt it anymore, is going to reduce the demand for Void Fletcher quite significantly. And a lot of the money of Uber Elder and a lot of the safety of Uber Elder comes from his unique items. And putting one of the biggest ones into the bin is definitely quite a bit of a hit. And you know, Uber Elder isn't cheap to run, and pretty much the only item of worth now, which is going to be a big hit, is going to probably be a good Watcher's Eye. You know, obviously there is the Eternity Shroud and stuff like that, but those generally tend to depreciate in value fairly sharply, you know, after the first few days. So by the time most people are kind of farming Uber Elder, it's going to be a Watcher's Eye or bust kind of game. However, obviously, everyone needs Watcher's Eyes. 3 mod Watcher's Eyes have the biggest potential, so Uber Elder still will be farmed, and Orb of Domination is also present on Uber Elder. However, I don't think he's probably going to be the most logical one to kind of go for and farm, due to the fact that you're missing out on the invitation, which is a lot of loot and a lot of safety, and then you're also missing out on you know, the cheaper entry to get access to the Orb of Domination. So since the Orb of Domination drops in the Shaper, Elder, and Cirrus, Uber Elder doesn't really get that much benefit from dropping it as well, especially when his drop table took a hit. So Uber Elder is definitely going to be a bit of a tough one. It's a little bit up in the air, but I imagine he still probably will be worth farming, especially early when the items have a bit of value. But in the end game, I'd probably say that the safer bet is probably to farm Cirrus first and foremost, and then the other two if you want to kind of go down that route as well. But Cirrus definitely does seem to be the no-brainer. He's got good uniques, he's got Awakener Orb, he's got Conqueror's Orbs, and he has Orb of Domination, and he has all 4 of the different Conqueror influences, which are probably going to be in demand. Cirrus is the clear winner here. Of course, we have our, you know, kind of floaty auxiliary invitation types as well, which people will need to complete to get their full Atlas unlock. These ones are very, very subject to the actual economy at hand. Obviously, Breach has a very powerful invitation drop in the form of the Flawless Breach Stone, which obviously can lead to one of the most expensive items in the game. But overall, Breach is probably going to be a little bit shaky. However, having said that though, there will probably be a way higher demand for the Grasping Mail, which comes from Breach and its invitations, far more frequently, due to the fact that you can now use the influence kind of crafting of the new expansion on that without having the downsides of having to manipulate the kind of Conquerors influence using the Exalted Orbs. So definitely could be upsides to Breach. However, it probably will stay in its place of being kind of like off meta, kind of a farming approach. Synthesis is probably going to be pretty damn off meta as well. However, the rings are probably going to be in big demand. It's pretty much same as always. It's going to be a gamble whether you get something or you don't. Ateria and Umbra are just on here for the feared, which is probably going to be a lot less profitable to farm unless you take the long route farming Shaper and Elder, due to the fact that a lot of the kind of bosses here don't have any of the new juice, which you could be getting into here if you were farming the other pieces of content here. So overall, I think I would recommend first and foremost Cirrus, and then second, third is probably Shaper and Elder. Those are probably going to be insanely profitable as a bosser if you can do them quick. Especially if you have kind of a hybrid build with high damage. So we're talking one, kind of like Poisonous Concoction and stuff like that can do the Guardians quick, get it out of the way, do the invitation, back in for another round. Probably going to be very, very profitable indeed. All right, let's talk about invitations, because these things got buffed a lot. So let's talk about what we lost first. So we lost the craftable watchstones. Those are no longer dropping, and they were about 40C towards the start of the league until they started to depreciate. However, those things were a pain in the ass to sell. No one liked really selling them, and you only really sold the good ones, like the platinum ones, and generally only the platinum Valos ones, let's be real. They've replaced those with awakened gems. Great. However, they have said that we're only getting the bad ones invitations. Not so great. But overall, it should be, pretty damn good. You can also get all the usual kind of uniques from your invitation type. So, if you're doing Breach, you're probably going to need the Breach uniques. And then you can also get the invite type loot. So for example, if you're doing Conquerors, I imagine you're going to get a shot at getting a Conquerors Exalt. But really, the real money spinner here is going to be the Maven Splinters. So the Maven Splinters are obviously going to be in high demand. The Maven has a ton of good stuff, which we'll get to the second here. But it has also been mentioned that these may also drop the new currency orb called the Orb of Conflict. When Chris in the actual announcement described the Orb of Conflict, he said it can drop from the Maven and her invitations. So obviously the invitations could have a chance of dropping the Orb of Conflict, which is going to basically be the Maven Orb equivalent of the new crafting system. So if it does drop that, it's going to be one of the only places that can drop it. That could definitely be pretty enticing as well. But overall, invitations probably better than ever. Probably a lot easier to sell the stuff that you get from them, because you're not going to get the trash watchstones anymore. I imagine they'll probably still drop all of the map kind of related stuff. They generally drop like maps if you're doing Shaper, Elder, they generally drop maps as well. They can drop stuff like Unmaking Orbs. So there's all sorts of stuff like this. Okay, let's get on to Maven herself. So all of her uniques have been buffed. However, I don't think too many people are kind of eyeing them off as potential build league start kind of candidate kind of stuff. Totems got nerfed, so her drop table's kind of in the toilet. Not too many people are going to be too keen on any of those uniques. However, they have added all of the best Awakened gems to Maven, and she's now the only place that you can get them. So stuff like Awakened GMP, Multi-Strike, and all sorts of stuff like this. This is apparently going to drop off of Maven, which is, pretty damn good. In addition to that, she does also have the elevated sextant. So as I mentioned earlier on in the video, sextants are now insane. They're completely ridiculous. However, they have said that a lot of the sextant mods are unchanged on elevated sextant. So we don't exactly know what that means. Did they not get any of the new mods? Is the mod pool exactly intact? If it's exactly intact, it's not going to be as powerful. But if it inherits any of the new mods, like, I don't know, Chayula, if you can get 15 charges of Chayula, that's actually crazy. Rolling sextants is already going to be an incredibly profitable endeavor, and with the ability to capture them all with a new compass item, there's no wastage. So elevated sextants probably going to have quite a premium on them, especially for big juicing groups, which I'm sure Empyrean is going to be. It's probably going to be something that they're going to be looking into. So elevated sextants is actually probably going to be a more powerful drop than it traditionally is. So stack that on top of the Awakened gems. And you can also get the new Orb of Conflict. So as I mentioned before, it's a new crafting one, basically on the level of Maven Orbs. And I imagine people are probably going to be churning through these pretty damn fast. And if the new crafting system is competitive at all compared to the old one, I imagine this is going to be a very in-demand currency. So overall, that's the legacy system. I think it's pretty much going to be a massive improvement. There's a lot more money to be made. There's going to be a lot more demand there and a lot less supply due to the fact that all of this stuff is gated behind T14, especially on the Conqueror side of things. Not everyone is going to have to kill Cirrus anymore, meaning there's going to be a lot less Awakener Orbs to play with. Alright, let's talk a little bit about the new Siege of the Atlas bosses and their potential. So first off, there is of course two like kind of smaller mini bosses. There's the Black Star in terms of the fire side of things, and there's the Infinite Hunger on the blue kind of meat side of things, which are kind of like the entry level bosses. These can be itemized, and Chris said that they're rewarding. Not entirely sure what this means, but I'm going to take a stab at guessing what they might drop. So of course they have their own uniques. I imagine they're probably also going to drop up to tier 2 and tier 3 of the Eldritch currencies, which may be important, but I imagine most of the emphasis and focus is going to be placed on the tier 4 counterparts, as they're what you can actually craft endgame items on. So I'm not sure how farmable or how rewarding these are going to be. It's important to note that these are rollable, like invitations, meaning you can outval them for like 100% quant, meaning that would be double loot in some cases. It is also possible that these things do drop some of the new meta mod or kind of meta crafting Eldritch currencies, so the Exalt, the Chaos, and the Annulment Orb. It's possible, maybe. I would probably put money on it that they do. However, we'll have to see. However, the real focus of the expansion is going to be on the next two, the Exarch and the Eater of Worlds. So the Exarch probably has the most cracked out loot unique table I've ever seen. He has a Watcher's Eye level chase item. He has a, like a massive chase item in terms of his staff. And he has an amulet that's a build around on the level of Indigon. So this guy is absolutely ridiculous. His uniques are on another level. And he also probably drops all of the Eldritch currencies in terms of the meta crafting kind of stuff like that, but he also drops the T4 Exarch Ember, which can obviously going to be a massive in-demand currency for anyone wanting to craft with this system. You're probably going to need like 50 of them. To give you kind of an example, because there's only 2 influence types, let's say you want to craft some gloves. Let's say that there's 20 different modifiers all equally weighted in the pool of gloves for Exarch mods. I imagine there's actually probably going to be more than that, and I imagine they're probably not going to be equally weighted, with the best ones being a low weighting, meaning in this scenario I've just painted, you're already going to need on average 20 of the Exarch T4 crafting materials to even roll a mod you want. And then you're probably going to need 20 of the Eater ones, because you're going to want 20, one mod here and one mod there. And then you're going to have to use the new orb off of Maven and Invitations to kind of level them up. And it's just going to be a lot of consumption. And if these items tend to be good, and they will be good, then there's going to be a lot of demand for this Eldritch currency, which is pretty good. In addition to that, these are also rollable, meaning the more geared and more powerful kind of boss kills are probably going to gravitate towards this like they do with the Feared, because they're probably going to be able to get way more loot than your average player is farming these. If they're worth it, you can pretty much bet your biscuits people are going to be outvaling these things. So overall, Exarch looking insane. We're not too sure what the Eater of Worlds kind of drop table looks like yet. We know that he's got some form of a bow. They are really pushing bows, and they are one of the more powerful second builds. So if that bow's any good, maybe there's a massive demand for that bow. We don't know how good his amulet's going to be. I think it's the +1/1, although I'm not entirely sure. The Eater of Worlds kind of drop table is a little bit more kind of a mystery to me. I'm not entirely sure what he drops, but he does drop the Chase Jewel, which is the counterpart to the Exarch, and he also drops his own currency. If I had to put money on it though, the interesting thing about this kind of boss system is that you can farm one or the other, and you have to invest Atlas points in one or the other. I guess you could do both if you wanted to farm both, but generally you're probably going to spec into either be an Exarch farmer or an Eater farmer. one or the other, and it'll be very interesting to see how this kind of balances out when we see people actually engage in the system, and we see like, oh man, everyone's farming the Exarch, like 70% of people farming these bosses farming Exarch. Well, okay, now suddenly all the Eater of Worlds items are going to be more expensive, and that will be pretty damn interesting. I'm very interested to see how that turns out, and I'm really interested to see how that balances out with all of the legacy systems we have going on here. So there's just more bosses and more potential to choose what you want to do than ever before. Now, I'm going to do a bit of foreshadowing here, but the thing that really piques my interest is that absolutely everything is tradable, and also everything comes from maps. If you look at Conquerors, Guardians for Shaper, Elder Guardians for Elder, Breachstones, Synthesis maps, Atziri, whatever, and then the Black Star and the Infinite Hunger, Exarch and Eater of Worlds, where do all of the materials which start these bossing chains come from? Maps. And what is everyone going to be rolling for League Start due to the fact that you need that to unlock the Atlas, unlock the Void Stones, and really get into the end game and get set up? Bosses. So what's going to happen? Is there going to be enough supply? Overall, I think once people start really kicking into gear and, farming like multiple sets an hour, there could be quite a big demand for speed mappers. Otherwise, the bosses on their skeleton mage builds are going to have to go into those maps themselves. And that's going to introduce the next video I'm going to do, which is talking about the mapping side of things. Because no matter where you look, there's potential everywhere. If you're league starting a bosser, fantastic. You have more options than you've ever had, and there's tons of room for innovation and sneaky little tactics to kind of get in there. Maybe you're selling bases over here, maybe you're taking advantage of the Conqueror market, maybe you're getting in on the new stuff. There's absolutely insane potential, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and it gets you just a little bit more excited about the new Siege of the Atlas expansion, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.